Welcome to episode 88 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So we're doing a new book this month, obviously.
Yes.
Like every other month.
Like every other month.
So we're doing the second book in a series. We're doing A Touch of Ruin, which I assume... No, the series is actually called Hades x Persephone, I think. That's what's on the bottom of the book.
Interesting.
I was going to say it's called A Touch of Darkness series, but that is the first book, is A Touch of Darkness. This is the second book.
Yes.
Yeah. So we did the first one a while ago. So now we're doing this one. So I haven't read this book before, so this is my first time. And that's how I read the first one, A Touch of Darkness 2, was I just read it for the podcast. So I won't really know many spoilers as we get into it, because I haven't really read much more than what happens this first week. But yeah, you've read it all before, have you?
Yes, I have read it all before. If you have not listened to our A Touch of Darkness episodes yet, they are episodes 45, 46, 47, and 48. So have a listen through those if you are not caught up on A Touch of Darkness, the series. But yeah, I read the series, and it's actually really bizarre because my first read through of the series was not actually that long ago. Mm-hmm. Like maybe, I'm thinking maybe 2-3 years ago. All three. So I think if I'm correct, I'm saying 4 books, knowing that I'm wrong, if that makes sense. So there's the Hades. It's Hades x Persephone is the series. Mm-hmm. So the next book is A Touch. There are 4 books so far. A Touch of Chaos, the 4th book, apparently is not out yet. It's not coming out till March of next year. Oh. Yeah, I thought it was out, but so I've read A Touch of Darkness, A Touch of Ruin, and A Touch of Malice.
You read them like that.
I did. I read them one after another. Yeah. I think A Touch of Malice must have just been out for me. Like a 3-year wait between books is extreme.
Yeah.
So it was definitely new out. Anyway, so I remember reading them the first time and being like, wow, these are good. And obviously I liked them because I went through them bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
But reading through them again, there are problematic things in them that I don't remember the first time around.
That's fair. That happens.
I don't know what it is. Just I maybe it was just I liked the story, so I skimmed over the bits that were annoying. But reading through it again, and if you do go back and listen to our Touch of Darkness episodes, I get heated about several things, like how they treat internships, for one.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's been a while since we've done them.
Yeah. Well, it was January of 2023, so, and we're into November of 2023, so it's been a hot minute.
Yes, that's fair.
There were just so many other books we wanted to do.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I had issues with Persephone in the last book because she annoyed me.
She's annoying.
And as we start this book, I continue to be annoyed by her.
I will say, I agree with you. I don't hate Hades. I don't mind him.
Although he is very problematic in the beginning of this book so far. I'm
problematic, yes.
I'm like, why are we all making poor choices here?
Yeah.
Why?
Guaranteed. They're both problematic. Out of the two of them, I like him more than I like her.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate when you have a heroine of a book, the main character of the book, that you don't like. Mm-hmm. It's just a constant eye roll.
Yeah. Which, I think part of the reason why these books took so long to come out is because she's also doing Hades' point of view as a separate series.
Yeah. But now, so that was sort of why I was a little bit, like, iffy on whether there were 4 books in the series. Because now, when you look up what order to read the books in, they recommend that you read them like her point of view, then his point of view, then her point of view, then his point of view. So really, technically, if we were being correct, we should have read Hades' point of view on A Touch of Darkness before reading this book. I just don't care to.
I think this book came out before Hades' point of view, though.
But it did. It did. But so, now the way they want you to read them is her, him, her, him, her, him.
Yes. I just feel like maybe in the 4th book, there'll be information you will need from Hades' point of view because she has written them after. But for these books, I don't think, like, it's not necessary. Maybe it was her intent all along that she was going to do his point of view. But this book came out before his point of view, so it's definitely not necessary to read his point of view before you read this one. Whereas, like, I worry that, like, the 4th book is going to be like, if you didn't read his point of view, you're missing something huge.
Well, so this is actually the thing. So I'm looking now at the release order. So Touch of Darkness came out in May of 2020. Then A Touch of Ruin, this book, came out in November of 2020. So a 6-month gap. And then A Touch of Malice, the 3rd book, came out in May of 2021. So another 6 months. And now we're waiting 3 years because The Touch of Chaos doesn't come out until March of 2024. So that's almost 3 years in between. She went 6 months, 6 months, 3 years.
And I guess 3 other books in Hades' point of view came out in that time.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like the 4th one is kind of going to be like how some people are like, can you skip Tower of Dawn? And, like, there's really important information in it. You can't skip it. But I don't know if I'm going to continue. Like, I didn't get the bug after A Touch of Darkness to continue reading this. I was semi-interested in Hades' point of view, but not enough to read the entire same story again.
No.
Like, oh, I do wonder, if you read the entire series just from his point of view, if he's, like, maybe a more likable character, if you would get more enjoyment out of the series or not?
Maybe.
I don't know. I'll never know, but that's just a thought. So I guess we'll see where this one goes, but I'm sure there'll be things happening.
Yeah.
Just things.
Just things.
I guess we'll kind of get into it. Just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy. This is a spacey book.
Yes. Yes.
I'll give you that.
Yeah, so, like, if that's what you're after, more power to you. Read the book. If plot is secondary,
yeah.
Go nuts.
And, like, there are things that, like, after reading this week, I am interested to see what happens. I just find Persephone so unlikable and not relatable to, like, I'm like, why?
She's,
why
like, she's just so dumb.
Yeah. I just don't understand her motivation, or her thought process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway. So I guess this week we're reading chapters 1 to 6. And,
so just a little recap of what happened in Touch of Darkness. We met Persephone, who is the goddess of spring, but she is hiding her goddessness from everybody. Her mother kept her prisoner for her whole life. She's finally branched out on her own, and she accidentally makes a deal with Hades to create life in the underworld. However, she cannot use her magic. Finds out at the end of the book the reason she can't use her magic is because she doesn't have worshippers. Worshippers create magic. So Hades worshipped her, so that she was able to use her powers, but she still doesn't have great control over them. But she is determined to live her mortal life in the Upperworld with her friend Lexa and, well, Sybil too, I guess. She appeared one day and all of a sudden they were besties. So she's determined to live her life in the Upperworld with her job at the newspaper and whatever. and have her relationship with Hades in the underworld. They've confessed their love for each other, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's really, like, other things happened, but are they important? Nah.
If they're important and they come up, we'll talk about them as they come up.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it is definitely an interesting take on mythology. Like, they are gods and goddesses. They do have powers. Like, they are worshipped by followers, but there's also this whole, like, culture of celebrity and tabloids and, like, that kind of shit. So it's definitely interesting.
I actually really like. Mm-hmm. Like, I like this idea and concept more than I like the Neon Gods concept, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, because, like, if you've read it or if you haven't, like, Neon Gods, they're not really gods or goddesses. They just have a position and are then part of the 13.
Like, it's an elected or, like, by birth.
Yeah, it depends.
Inherited council.
Yeah, it depends which, like, position or name you're talking about, how you would get it. But it's also the same kind of, like, tabloidy world. So there are definitely similarities. But those books do one happily ever after per book and then go on to a new couple. Like, it isn't like this one, the same people. But yeah, so we start this book, and it's literally, it starts with Persephone, and she is thinking about the first book when she jumped into the river Styx. She's currently walking by, so she's walking by the river Styx now with a soul Yuri, and she's literally thinking about how she jumped into the river, obviously in the last book, which was the moment that I wanted to
hate her forever.
Yeah, I was like, she's irredeemable now as a character. Like, just so, I guess maybe they don't know the mythology that we do, sure, but it's never a good idea to jump into a raging river. Never. So Yuri is a soul that's obviously been in the underworld for a long time. So Persephone is just, like, talking to her about a few things. And she asks her what it was like when she first arrived here, when Yuri first arrived in the underworld. She says it was, like, bleak and gray. There were no days and nights. And, like, they were all just, like, kind of shades and more shadows of the way it is now. Persephone says that sounds like a punishment, but Yuri says it was their sentence for living mundane lives. So, I guess in Greek mythology, you either get sent to Tartarus if you're bad, right? If you're, like, a hero, if you do something special in your life, you get sent to, I don't know what it's called.
Elysium?
Sure. Makes sense. But it's, like, more heaven-like. And then this is kind of just for the mundane, everyday people. They get sent here. And it's not really a punishment. Yes, we are the mundane, everyday people. We will get sent there. Hopefully. I don't want to... I don't think I did anything bad enough to go to check this. Anyway. But yeah, so they just get this mundane afterlife. So when she was first there, it was much more bleak than it is now. Yuri says that there was a rumor that a mortal lover of Hades went to the underworld, and that's why he changed the way things are. Like, that's why he made it what it is now, which is kind of like a joyful place. Like, last book we saw that they had a market, and, like, all the souls were, like, happy. Which is kind of funny because everybody, obviously, in the Upperworld thinks that Persephone is a mortal lover of Hades. So it's kind of almost like her story is what, like, happened to him before. But obviously we know that she's a goddess. But of course Persephone feels jealous that Hades once had a lover. This is a trope I fucking hate. Obviously, an immortal is going to have many lovers in their lifetime. But for their new lover to be jealous of it, I get so annoyed. Because, like, it happens in so many books, but there's nothing you can really do about it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm trying to remember, was she a virgin?
I assume so, because her mother wouldn't let her leave. Yes, she was, because they had sex a million times and it was so great. Immediately. Yeah, she was a virgin.
Anyway, so, like, I understand, like, where she's coming from, because, you know, she's a virgin, he's the only one she slept with, and the only one she will ever sleep with, because they're gonna be together forever. But, like, just the fact that he is the only one she has slept with, like, obviously, he's thousands and thousands of years old.
Yes.
So, like, he's gonna have a past, and her being as innocent as she is, I do think that she is going to feel self-conscious about that. Yeah. Like, it can't be helped. Like, you're gonna compare yourself to others in the past.
For sure. And it definitely makes it harder that she's never been with anybody either. Like, I do understand where it's coming from. I guess.
I know. I just don't like this principle.
It's so unrealistic, and I just wish that she would just, like, have a conversation instead of, well, that's the entire book. I wish that they would have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so she is feeling some jealousy, even though this was literally hundreds of years ago, we can assume. Her main feeling of jealousy here is because it's not even just that he had a previous lover, it's more that he had a previous lover who inspired change in him, and that is something that she did, which she obviously has a lot of pride about. So, like, I guess it makes a bit more sense, but it is still, like, he's immortal, you know?
Yeah.
Yuri continues on, because this is all in Persephone's head about her jealousy. But she says that she thinks that Hades just decided to change as the world became less chaotic. So did the underworld. So she doesn't think that it was the lover that inspired him. She thinks that he just, like, as things on the ground upstairs changed, he kind of changed the way he did things in the underworld, which also could make sense. So, but obviously Persephone is kind of stuck in her head, and she can't stop thinking about Hades having past loves.
Well, because then too, like, you gotta think, like, not saying that he doesn't know his own mind, but, like, if he's been in love in the past, then, like, it's one of those things where, like, you know, when you start a new relationship and you start saying you love each other, like, how do you know that it's the forever kind of love? Like, you always think when you first love someone, you always think, oh, yes, like, this is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with.
Yeah.
And then things go downhill. Not always, obviously, but, like...
They always go downhill. Always.
But, like, things then go downhill, and then you might break up. So, like, I feel like she's probably stuck there, too, of... You know, he loved them. He's saying he loves me, but, like, he's not with them anymore. So, like, will he not be with me anymore?
And, like, they kind of sort of broke up a bit in the first book for a hot second. I can't really remember why, but...
Because deal. It was a she's all that situation.
Oh, yes. I forgot that he had a deal going, too.
He had a deal going.
That was really, like, so minor.
Out of left field, too.
It was out of
like,
left
wait,
field,
what?
And it was so minor. Like, it was just like...
It was like, I hate you. You made a deal about me. And then, like, 2 days later, I can't live without you. I forgive you.
Yeah. that I completely forgot about that part. But, yeah, that's a thing that happened. Yeah, so I can understand her feeling overwhelmed and all of that. I just think that she's so young and she's so naive, and she doesn't know, like, jealousy isn't a bad feeling. People feel jealous for many different reasons. Like, in relationships, like, it sucks, but you're gonna feel jealous sometimes, and, like, you're gonna feel jealous of somebody's life sometimes, like Instagram shit, you know? And you have to find a way to use it to not feel bad about yourself, but to like work on yourself maybe. I don't know. This is all whatever it is, but like you can't just feel jealousy and then spiral into despair, kind of like Persephone starts to do here. Like you have to really keep a check on what you let your emotions do, because like obviously everyone's going to feel jealousy. It's the way you deal with feeling jealousy that I don't like about Persephone.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they're still walking along the river Styx, and they see souls of recently dead that are waiting. And they're all visibly terrified. And Persephone wonders why they're like given no comfort before they walk the road of judgment. So like, I guess this is where it gets decided where they're going to go. They have to walk, whatever. And then they're either obviously going to end up in a place of rest or eternal torture. But Persephone thinks like this whole like just leaving them there terrified is archaic.
But like, what does she expect like a nice waiting room?
Yeah. I don't get what she like wants. Just spit everywhere. Sorry.
Amazing.
I don't really understand what she thinks should be done here. Because like the people that are going to Tartarus, like I don't think that they really need any. If they're going for eternal torture, shouldn't they be afraid of that? Like a little waiting room or a little welcome committee isn't going to make that any better.
Yeah.
And it's not like this is going to take forever. I think it's okay to be afraid about judgment with like the big J.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Persephone walks over and introduces herself, but Yuri tells her she should show her divinity because they, like, humanity worship the divine. Mm-hmm. If you'll remember from the last book, she obviously isn't comfortable with the form, but she does drop her glamour, and she wants to let these souls know that the king, Hades, cares.
Does he?
Right? I don't think this is her place. This is just like...
I think she wants him to care, but does he actually care?
Like, he cares once they're there. But, like, a few seconds of uncomfortableness isn't the end of the world.
But also, though, like, he cares. But, like, I don't think he cares in the way she wants him to care.
No, I agree.
Like, she's the one that spends her time playing with the young souls and, like, going in the market and showing her face. He doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Like, he cares about their comfort.
Yeah.
Like, he wants them to be comfortable, the ones that, like, get the normal afterlife. But, like, he doesn't care enough about them to, like, want to interact with them.
Yeah.
So, like, her saying, oh, he cares, I don't think he really does in the way she wants him to.
I agree. And, like, this is really, like, she's trying to change everything in the not everything, but she is trying to make big changes in the underworld. Like, if she's going to say that she wants to change the way that souls are greeted or left or whatever, like, that is a big change. You can't just do that. This is not, you're brand new here. You can't just go around changing everything. Like, this is it's not his business, but, like, it may as well be.
It's his life.
But it's, like, it's not even just his life, because that is bad enough. Like, going in a new relationship and trying to change somebody personally is not great. But going into a new relationship and being like, I'm going to change how this... I know it's not his business either, but it kind of is more like a business than his life. Like, it's even worse than just being like, I'm going to change this person. It's like, I'm going to change this thing that also impacts many other people because I'm his new girlfriend.
Yeah.
Anyway. So she tells them that she's the goddess of spring, and they all drop to the ground to worship her. And obviously that's not what she was hoping for, but what do you expect? Yeah.
Ugh.
She helps up an older soul whose name is Eleanor, and tells her she hopes she finds the underworld as peaceful as she does. I'm like, what if Eleanor did something real shitty and is going to Tartarus? Persephone then suggests that they all go to the field of judgment, but Thanatos, the winged god of death, appears, and I think we met him in the last book a few times.
We did, yeah.
He reaps the souls of the dead, and in the last book, he helped Persephone understand Hades better. So he shows up because this is his job, and none of Persephone's business. But Yuri tells Thanatos that Persephone is needed at the castle.
How does Yuri know? They were walking together.
Because it's a lie.
Okay.
And that he should take these souls instead. And Persephone is kind of like confused as to why she couldn't take them. But Yuri says she was one of the souls before. And they would have asked her for favors and to see Hades. So, like, it's really not in her best interest to be around them until she understands more about, like, what she can even do.
Yeah. Well, because it's true. Like, they would have been like, oh, please, we need to see Hades. This is all a big mistake. She would have totally been like, oh, and felt bad and been like, okay.
100%.
And taken them to see Hades.
Yeah.
So, like, and, like, he's too busy for that shit.
Yeah.
And, like, they don't get special treatment. They're just regular souls.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's totally, like...
Yuri's right.
Yes.
Yuri then mentions that Hades chose Persephone to be his wife. Which, like, I guess they're not really talking about that yet. But obviously all the souls think that Persephone is going to be the queen of the underworld. But yeah, she feels kind of uncomfortable about the idea of being his wife and the queen, and it's kind of because of the fact that they broke up, and she's feeling insecure. Obviously, the jealousy isn't helping either. Mm-hmm. Yuri also says, and this is a terrible thing to say, that Hades had many chances to choose a mortal or a nymph to be his queen, but he chose Persephone because she is a goddess.
Ew.
And you're like, shit, you probably didn't need to. But it's true. So obviously she feels jealous, and she wonders if Hades only wants her because she is a goddess. Which is a good question, and probably something they should talk about.
But, like, also, not even just the fact that she's a goddess, but she's a goddess that acts mortal.
Yeah.
Like, she's not vain and self-centered like all the other goddesses are.
Yeah. Yeah. So she ends up hanging out with the souls for a bit, and she thinks of their summer solstice plans to have the souls at the castle again. So this is one of her other initiatives, is to, like, have the souls have parties with Hades to show his appreciation of them, but also to show him that they love him, I guess.
But, like, on top of that, how many fucking souls are there that they could fit all of them in the castle?
Maybe it's a magic castle. I have
but, like,
no
just
idea.
think about how many millions of people are probably hanging out in there. Like, they're not inviting everybody. They can't.
Yeah, I don't get it.
So, like, is it just their neighborhood? They're just inviting,
the special,
like, this
neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it, because, like, you'd think that
it's the same souls over and over again.
Yeah. How? Because, like, how does she find Yuri all the time? Like, how does she find these same souls all the time? It's interesting. Persephone also thinks that, like, the Pan-Hellenic Games are also coming up soon. And that is something that I think was brought up in the last book, kind of. And I'm assuming we'll get more into in this book, possibly. Persephone goes back to the palace, and she's still obviously feeling a bit unsettled, but she goes to, like, a library to read up on history of magic, as she's kind of preparing for her first magic lesson with Hecate. And it's to help her with her erratic powers. So she doesn't really have control of her powers, so she's going to learn. She just, like, starts to get horny, so she knows Hades is getting closer to her. I think, like, literally, she's like, oh, I'm a little bit horny now. Hades must be close. And I'm like, what the fuck? But of course, so he shows up and he gives her a hot kiss. And he brings up her meeting the new souls today. So obviously, Thanatos went back to him and was like, hey-o, she tried to bring them to...
She tried to do my job.
Yeah.
Talk your bitch down.
Right? But she tells him that she was walking with Yuri, and he's surprised she took a soul outside of Asphodel, because he doesn't usually let them leave there so that they don't cause trouble. So, like, she's breaking rules left and right here. But she says he doesn't give himself enough credit for having changed, and therefore does not give the souls enough credit for recognizing it. And I'm like, who is she to tell him all this shit? Anyway. She tells him that the souls were scared, and he says some of them should be. But she asks...
Valid point.
Yeah. She asks him, like, why the good people should fear him and why they should fear this place. But he says her greeting them won't stop them fearing him, because that's the point of Hades. He's the god of the underworld. He's supposed to be scary. But she says he could get them to. And he says as much as she disfavors the title of queen, she's acting like one. And, like, I kind of take that as, like, she is trying to make giant changes, but she doesn't want to accept the title. Like,
yeah. One or the other, sis.
Yeah. He says the fates have declared that she will be his queen, but she would rather he want her to be queen because he loves her, not because of the fates. And then she brings up, obviously, her being a goddess. And he asks if she doubts his love. And they kind of get a bit heated because she asks if he's going to punish her for speaking her mind. And, like...
Why would he?
Because he kind of gets annoyed that she is doubting that he loves her. But, like, this is where he's problematic, too. Because I'm like, if she's doubting it, that's a you problem.
Yeah.
Like, and it's real, yeah.
Reassure her, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I just... I don't know. I feel like he obviously has his own issues and his own baggage, but, like, part of it is he isn't great at emotions. Or understanding that other people have them as well.
What? Other people have emotions?
Yeah. She asks him if he would still want her without the fates, and he grabs her face and says he knew that the fates made her for him, and he said he could taste it on her skin, and the only thing he regrets is that he lived so long without her. So, like, it is pretty sweet.
That's cute, yeah.
And it's, like, semi-reassuring. So you're like, cool, thank you. He kisses her cheek and jaw, then steps back, and she's like, what the fuck? And he says, this is just foreplay. And he tosses her over his shoulder and says that he's going to prove that he wants her. And I'm pretty sure, like, as she's... This is another thing we did with A Touch of Darkness, is I kept trying to figure out her position. But, like, she's over his shoulder, and he, like, starts fingering her while she's over his shoulder. You're like, okay, cool.
I mean, maybe as gods and goddesses, they can do pretzel-y things.
Yeah. But she pulls his head back and kisses him, and I'm like, if her head is back here, his head, like, maybe, like, how are you getting his head that far back?
Yeah, but it must be a pretzel situation.
Yeah, it has to be super uncomfortable. So he, like, puts her against a wall instead, because, like, that is easier. And then he tells her that he will punish her until she screams and comes so hard around his cock. And she'll be left with no doubt of his affection. And she's like, yes, please. And then the wall behind them collapses. And you're like, what the fuck is going on?
Like... immediately, or just, like, after they've after they've, like, had sex against it so hard it collapses.
No. They haven't had sex. There's no coming on her part yet.
Oh, the wall just collapses.
Yes. Is what she says. And then they end up in the dining room, and it is full. The staff is there, including Thanatos, Hecate, and Chiron. So we're like, this is awkward. But then she realizes that it was actually a door, not like they were leaning against a door.
Oh.
So like it didn't actually collapse, but she was like,
it just opened.
The door just opened. But obviously, I guess if you're against it, you would feel like something was collapsing. I get it. But I'm still like,
yeah.
Hades then tells everybody that they're famished and wish to be left alone for supper. So everybody leaves.
I mean, we all know what's happening, and they all know what's happening.
Right? And I'm like, that is awkward. So they're supposed to come back tomorrow and eat off this dining table? Ugh. Yes. Anyway, so he pushes her back up against the table, and he says he's hungry, and he lifts her onto the table and kneels between her legs. And just as she's, like, almost getting there, like she's about to have an orgasm, somebody starts knocking on the door. And they try to ignore it, but they keep knocking, and then the person literally says, Lord Hades, and that it's something important. So he goes out to talk to them, and Persephone's just like, this is awkward, so she just gets off the table.
Yes. She's left bereft.
Right, it's unfortunate for her. But she... so she just stands there waiting for Hades to come back. And when he does, he says he has urgent business with Ilias, and he'll be back in an hour or two. And she asks him not to go. And he says, like, he has to. But so then she asks if she can come with him. And he says it's not wise. And he kind of snaps at her a bit then. And it's like, you can have a bit more patience. You were literally just about to make her come on the table. Of course she's not going to want you to leave. But also, if it is important and it has to do with his job, like, she also needs to understand that he needs to go do shit. When we actually find out what it is, I'm more okay with her being upset about it. But, like, in this moment, I was like, he has important things he has to do. You can't be upset with him for leaving.
Yeah.
But she is. But he says he'll make up for it when he gets back. So she ends up going into the garden, and she ends up at Hecate's house, who asks if she's done already, because obviously she saw them go into the dining room and kick everybody out.
Yeah.
But Persephone's like, obviously not. So Hecate asks her to train instead, and Persephone says only if she gets to blow something up. But Hecate tells her she gets to meditate, which is obviously not what Persephone wanted. But Hecate is like, I like Hecate a lot. She's like, there's a lot of side characters that I like so much in these books.
Yeah, she's like a really good voice of reason.
Yeah. So her first thing is basically she tells Persephone she needs to learn to control her emotions, because her emotions are what, like, make her magic react. And it's usually when she's upset or scared or pissed off. Like, she turned Minthy into a mint plant because she was jealous, and we just left her like that, and she is still a mint plant, and, like, that's okay.
That's as far as it goes.
Like, we're never gonna, you can't punish a goddess, I guess. But yeah, so she needs to learn how to control her emotions so that she can control her power. So, like, it really all makes sense, and you're like, this is smart. And she also tells her that this is how Persephone will learn to control her magic and, like, her life, really, because that's also an issue. And that really speaks to Persephone, because, like, as much as I dislike her, she has been in a lot of shitty situations, and, like, obviously her mother was very controlling, and, like, she doesn't want to be put into a relationship like that again. So, like, I do understand some of her traumas. So they go through a bunch of different meditation, and Persephone is not doing good with it. She swears that she can feel Hades behind her at, like, 2 different points, and, like, telling her what he wants to do to her. So, like, she's very one-track minded, horny right now, and it is not going away.
She's pent up, man.
I just wish she had done something about it instead of been like, now I'm gonna go practice magic and pretend I'm not horny. She could have easily gone back to a room and got herself off and then done that.
That's true. Yeah. Although, would Hades have been one of those men that are like, I'm the only one allowed to make you come?
Maybe. But I would have been like, then you should have done it. So Hecate kind of realizes like this isn't working. So she says blowing something up is likely a better use of their time. But we don't get that, which I think would have been fun. I want to see the blowing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
The next morning, Persephone wakes up in a rush and she's trying to grab all of her shit, but like Hades is kind of like tackling her into the bed, keeping her there. And she thinks he did make good on his promise. He got home at like 3 a.m. and they had much sex, but we don't see any of it.
Much sex.
And he says he'll take her to work in seconds, like he can teleport her there. But she wants to go on her own. Why? Yeah. So she's like pulling on her rumpled clothes and he snaps his fingers and like puts her in a new outfit. It's like a black dress and heels. And I'm like, amazing. Why can't somebody just snap their fingers and dress me?
Why can't we all do that?
I love it.
Although the only thing is I would not want to be dressed into like a black dress and heels.
I know. But like that's her go-to for work. Like, yeah. It wouldn't be me. Black dress combat boots? Sure. But
yeah. For me, black dress and flats, like, I can it. I can manage that. Or, like, Keds or something, I can do.
He does also convince her to He convinces her to let him get his driver to take her to work. Sorry, that sentence wasn't working in my brain. In the vehicle, she can finally get texts because when you're in the underworld, you don't have service, so you don't get texts. So she has a million texts from Lexa, who is her best friend and roommate, who we met in the last book too. But Lexa is telling her that she's officially famous, and there are a bunch of articles out about her and Hades, and there's photos of their kiss that was like in the middle of the street, so it's not surprising that there's photos of it. And there's an article, there's like many articles, but like there's a few that she has, and they're like Hades' lover. So it's like she's not a person in these articles. She's just who she is related to him. Lexa is also starting to work at Hades' not-for-profit today. It's her first day at work, but it's the Cypress Project. And Hades even tells Persephone that Lexa would have got the job anyway, but you're like, would she have? Is she just getting this job because she's her best friend?
This happens a lot, actually.
In real life, you mean?
Like, no. I mean, in this book. Yes. In this book. And, like, the thing that bothers me is, like, if... I don't know. I just, like, why is it... Do I like nepotism? No. But, like, at least be obvious about it. You know what I mean? Like, be honest to... Like, obviously don't be honest to the world about it, but, like, at least be honest amongst yourselves.
Yes. I just...
Like, this is an obvious case of nepotism. Let's just call a spade a spade.
Do we remember what Lexa did in the last book? Did she have a job?
I don't think we were told.
I think she was a student. Maybe.
It seems like a lot of students are getting jobs right out of college. Because that's real life. So good for Lexa. She got a job by being Persephone's best friend. You know what? You should get perks. I guess. That's true. So Persephone gets to her office and there's a crowd outside. So she asks the driver, Antony, who's a Cyclops, who we also met in the last book, to drop her off around the corner so that she can avoid the mob. Which her plan doesn't really make sense. She would rather walk into the mob than get dropped off into it. I guess it's I've stopped wondering about her motivations. I can't. To be honest.
She does ask Antony not to tell Hades because she doesn't want to be a prisoner again. So like this is very much a main theme of her life. But she's worried that if Hades does know about all of this shit, he'll try to keep her safe. And obviously her mother was trying to keep her safe, and she ended up stuck in a greenhouse forever.
Yeah.
So she gets dropped off. He agrees not to tell Hades. Hermes then shows up, and Hermes is my favorite person in this book, and I need more of him. And when she disrespects him, I want to punch her in the face. But he's the best. And they have such cute little banter. And he asks her why she doesn't just teleport inside, because she's a goddess. But she says she's trying to maintain her normal life. And we also know...
Does she know how to teleport at this point?
She can. It's just kind of... glitchy? That's not the right word. She's not great at it. Like, she's not great at getting the location down, so she could fuck it up.
Okay. I'll buy that.
So Hades says he'll help her in exchange for a date. You're like, okay, a real date?
Hades or Hermes?
Yes, Hermes. Sorry. Hermes says that he'll help her in exchange for a date. Which I think would be so cute. They should date.
Yeah.
Not actually, because Hades would kill him. But Hermes teleports into the middle of the crowd and starts like taking pictures and signing autographs as a distraction so that she can get into her office, which she does. And there's a beautiful blonde, sapphire-eyed receptionist there named Helen. I'm assuming it's gonna...
Who we learned... So Helen she was in the last book, and she was one of the ones with her internship that made me really angry.
Helen is new. The old receptionist that was in the last book ended up getting her job upstairs or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, did she?
Because, but she was one that wasn't in the last book. She did annoy you because she was like, I'm finishing school and then I'm going to go upstairs and work for Zeus directly. So now I guess she's finished school.
In 2 years. Yeah. Or like she had been on her internship for 2 years already or something. And it's like, what sort of internship lasts that long?
Yeah, so...
Or like who gets headhunted 2 years before graduation as a receptionist?
And now she's upstairs working with Zeus.
Ugh.
So like she's doing, None of this makes sense, but whatever. So this is a new receptionist, and I'm assuming she's going to have something to do with Helen of Troy. Like that's who she's going to be. In some way.
Maybe.
Just because she's so beautiful and her name is Helen.
Yeah, and I think that is sort of I do think that is who the character is based on, but as far as my recollection goes, I don't think it's discussed.
Okay. So Helen tells her that she obviously had many calls this morning, so she sent any tips, like paper tips, to her voicemail, and all of the other ones, which were mostly requests for interviews, she took by hand and like has a list of them and asks if Persephone wants them, and she just says no. And then Helen says that Dimitri, her boss, wants to see her. So she goes to his office, and he has like newspapers around him, and she is on all of them with her kiss. He tells her to come in.
Yeah, so that kiss was the very last scene of the last book. Her, like, running to him and, like, him scooping her up in her arms in the middle of the street and then, like, hardcore making out.
So dumb. He should have just teleported them immediately.
Like, what did they expect? Like, what did she expect to happen? She was making out with the god of the underworld in the middle of a busy street. But it's fine.
So Dimitri tells her to come in and shut the door, and she's afraid she's about to be fired for getting with the subject of her paper, of her investigation, article whatever. Which, like, I don't think that's a rule, but that's obviously what she's worried about. Not that what happens is any better, but he tells her she has a lot of potential and loves finding the truth. And then he says he wouldn't ask if he didn't have to, but he needs an expose on her and Hades by Friday or she's fired. And he tells her it came from the top. So it's not him asking for this. It's Cal Stravos, who is the CEO of Epic Communications. So, like, Epic Communications owns Athens News and probably a bunch of other shit. But, like, he is very high up. So, it's a big deal. and she could lose her job. She is obviously annoyed about this, but she refuses to tell Hades about this ultimatum that she was given, and she thinks maybe she could write something else instead that would make them not want this expose on her. And she thinks about, like, the big three, but the big three include Hades.
Yeah, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades.
But she thinks about, like, I guess she already did Hades, so the other two, she's gotten tips over time of how shitty they have been, and she's like, whoa, maybe if I write about those two instead of myself and Hades, they won't make me write this article, which is dumb. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but that's her new plan. Lexa messages her and asks if she's okay, and she just responds to say it got worse, and Lexa asks if she wants to get drunk. And she's kind of unsure, but then she says, yeah, let's do it, because we can celebrate your first day and how great it's going. Which I'm like, how does a first day go great? I've never had a great first day in my life. I'm always the dumbest I'm ever going to be.
See, my first days are always, well, I don't say always, but so far, I've had great first days, because my first day, like, your first day in a new school is always the admin day at the beginning of the year. So, like, there are no kids in the building. It's just teachers. So you just spend the day, like, setting up your classroom, meeting the new staff and stuff like that. So I usually have a decent first day.
I just, like, my first day that I remember vividly is one of my first days at my job I have now. But I went in, and they were like, okay, this is your computer, and, like, I could not turn the computer on. And I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? How am I the dumbest person in the entire world right now? Like, just, like, the nervous jitters, and then your brain doesn't work very well. Yeah. It ended up, it wasn't plugged in.
And you don't want to go out... And you don't want to go out and say, like, I can't get my computer to turn on. Because then you look like no offense. You could look, people would be like, what
but
is
then
wrong
you're in there
with
for
this
like
moron?
20 minutes already, and you're like, I can't ask now. I just gonna click clack on this computer that's not on. No. I figured out it wasn't plugged in. I figured it out. But you do feel really dumb, and it feels like you're taking way too long to do things because you don't know what you're doing. So I'm just like, how on a first day in a job that, like, her first job ever, that she's never done anything with, she's like, it's amazing, I'm so great at it. I'm like, okay. So later that day, Persephone gets her mail from Helen, and there's a pink envelope full of cut-out hearts that someone had to physically put into her inbox because there's no, like, return address or anything. So she asks Helen, but Helen doesn't know who dropped it off. So she just throws it out. No big deal. I'm sure that'll never come up again. At the end of the day, people are still waiting outside, so she goes to find a fire exit, and on her way, she ends up slamming into somebody, and they tell her that they wouldn't go out that way if they were her, because people are outside there too. And she looks up at them, and it's a handsome janitor, and he tells her that he can get her out, but she won't like how. And she doesn't. It's a garbage cart. So she gets in, and then he puts a bag of garbage on top of her so that nobody can see her, and he rolls her out.
Love it.
I just don't understand why she cares so much today about getting out this way, but then later on, she's like, who cares? I'll just walk right into the building and walk right out. Like, whatever.
I know. She's very wishy-washy. I feel like it depends on her mood. Like, on happy days, she's like, yeah, I'll deal with the press, and she just walks on by them. When she's feeling more, like, uncertain about things, then she's sort of like, no, I can't deal with it
that
today.
Makes sense. That's giving her a lot of credit.
It is.
So
I'd like to know why this handsome janitor is giving her the time of day. Like, does he know who she is? And like, why is he even off? Like, I'm not saying he can't be a good person and offering to help, but like, it just seems weird that he sees her trying to go out the back way and is like, oh, don't go that way. There are people that way. Can I help you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, they don't know each other. They've never spoken. Why is he offering to help her today?
Yeah.
Plot,
So he tells her his name is Perithus, possibly.
I think it's Perithius.
I don't know.
Perithus? Oh, I don't know. I thought there was an I after the TH.
Incorrectly. But she offers him a favor in return, but he hates the idea of that, and she thinks like he must have dealt with the gods. He also says something else during their conversations that like makes her think that like he doesn't care for the gods. And I think he realizes who she is and that she is like attached to a god, because he kind of makes comments about it before he helps her. So Persephone goes back to her apartment, and Lexa talks about how she's famous now, and she's really Hades' first public relationship. But Persephone obviously thinks of Minthy and like many other lovers that he might have had. So she kind of like changes where the conversation is and asks Lexa about her first day, which was awesome. She says Hades gave her a tour, and apparently he does that for every new employee. He like personally gives them a tour. And Persephone kind of feels weird that he didn't tell her he was going to do that. But like, if it's something he does for everybody, I don't really... Because I don't, like, is it jealousy? Is she jealous that he, like, I don't know what she's...
I don't think so. I think it's more like she just wishes he would communicate his life more. Like, obviously she wants to be all up in his grill about his life. Like, not in a bad way. She just wants to know about his life. And, like, when her best friend starts working with him, like, I guess maybe she just wants a token, like, hey, like, I'm gonna give Lexa a tour today. You know what I mean? Like, just like...
It would be weird if, like, Jeff left and didn't tell me that he was, like, giving you a tour of something later that day.
Yeah, like, right? Like, if I started working for Jeff and Jeff not to say to you, like, oh,
yeah,
I'm giving Kristen a tour. Or, like, you know what I mean? It would be a little odd for then me to tell you later, oh, I saw Jeff today. We hung out for like an hour. And you'd be like...
And you to be like, he does that for every employee, not for it to be like, he was just at work, you know? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I get it. But I just thought it was like, we don't really get what the emotion is. And I was like, is she jealous? Or is she like, just like, what is this feeling? But anyway, whatever. Lexa does tell her that Hades' projects show how much he is inspired by Persephone. Like, he uses many of the same words that she uses, and then he has a picture of her in his office, and that makes her feel weird too, because she didn't realize he did have a picture of her. I'm like, this should reassure you a tiny bit, maybe? Like, he loves you.
Yeah, like, he has a picture of you, and you're in, like, they've been together for, like, or no, they've been together a while. Because she had 6 months to do the... Right. So they've been, although, like, how much of that is together, but, like, you know, they've been together for several months.
Yes. And, like, he did the whole foundation was based on her telling him he's wrong. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Telling him he's an asshole.
They talk about Persephone again, and Lexa is kind of surprised that Persephone isn't enjoying all the attention, since she says it's mostly about her work. But, like, it's not really. Yeah.
No, it's about her relationship.
I kind of get what Persephone is saying. She's like, she feels like a possession, and she wants notoriety for her journalism. And then Lexa kind of says she doesn't understand why Persephone doesn't want to let people know that she's a goddess. But it's obviously not what she wants. She wants a normal life with normal shit and to become famous of her own volition. She goes to take a shower and Hades shows up. And he obviously knows that she had a hard day because of everything. But he tells her she should use her magic, or that, like, he can help her, like, get to work and shit, but she just refuses. And he tells her it's only a matter of time before someone uses her against him, and that he will keep her safe. Like, she didn't really think of that, which isn't very smart. She asks if he could just make everyone forget about them being together, which is insane. Like, how?
Like, she is so much more insulting to him than he is to her. Like, literally, he's like offering to help her at every turn, and she's like, no. He's like, oh, I want you to be my queen, and she's like, no. And then he's like, oh, like, I can help you with whatever you want, and she's like, no, make everybody forget that we're together. It's like she wants to keep him a secret, and that is so insulting. And like, he takes it in stride. Like, he doesn't get, I mean, we can't say he doesn't get hurt because we didn't read his, we haven't read his side of the story, but like, you know, he doesn't, he takes it in stride, and he tries to understand her perspective.
He even asks here, like, what's so terrible about being his lover? And she doesn't even answer. She just says she doesn't like the title lover. But he says, like, she won't let him call her lady or queen either. And she thinks, like, it's because she's afraid of those titles. And, like, the thought of losing them and losing him is, like, too overwhelming. She doesn't want to be called those. But she doesn't want to be called lover. And then he suggests girlfriend, but she says it seems so insignificant for what they have.
What the hell does she want? Partner's like the only one left.
I just don't know.
I will say, I do agree. I wouldn't want to be called lover either, because to me, lover sort of harkens back to like all of his previous relationships, because they're all called lovers too. So like, I wouldn't want to be called lover either, because to me that is it makes it seem like
exactly. I get sex. That, but I don't know. Like, she doesn't know what she wants either. So what is he?
I was literally just thinking that exact thing. She doesn't know what she wants. Yeah. And, like, it's sort of what you get when, like, he is one of the big three. Like, he is an uber celebrity. And it's sort of like, you have to, if she loves him and wants to be with him, there are some things you just have to accept. Like, same thing as if you were to date a celebrity. If you're going to date a celebrity, you have to accept the fact at some point or other, your picture will be taken and put in tabloids. Like, that's just a certainty, right? And you have to weigh whether that notoriety is worth being in that relationship. So, like, she needs to weigh whether her being in this relationship with Hades is worth her having her picture taken and speculated on by paparazzi. Like, it's just certain eventualities that need to
and it's just
accepted.
Like, it annoys me so much because of how, what's that word? Hypocritical she is. Because she is an investigative journalist, and she is digging into people's lives. But now that it's about her, she's like, I hate it. Like, you can't really have it both ways. Like, now you're understanding how people feel when you write about them. Shouldn't that give you a little bit of empathy? Nah, bruh. Not at all. So Lexa knocks on the door and says she's ordering pizza and asks if Persephone is okay, but she is super distracted by Hades because he's starting to get hot and heavy. But Persephone stops him from getting anywhere because she wants to punish him for leaving her in the dining room. I hate...
But, like, he made it...
Yeah.
He made it up to her later.
I hate it. You can't punish your partner. Like, that is awful. I hate that. And she says that she deserves hours, and he tells her he'll give her a preview, and he only needs like seconds or something. But she says later, and he says he'll take that as a promise and leaves. So, like, he doesn't even realize he's being punished. Like, this is communication. Just be like, whatever. So Persephone and Lexa watch a movie and they're drinking wine, and then the doorbell rings, and obviously they're expecting the pizza, but it's actually Sybil. And she comes in and bursts into tears. And Persephone can feel her sadness, a bit of jealousy, and a coldness. And she's never really felt someone's feelings like this before, so she pushes it down.
And I don't know if this
It does.
comes up ever again.
Yeah.
Does it?
During, like, one of the mob scenes. But
Okay.
I don't know, like, how much anything else comes up.
Okay.
Sybil tells them that she's not an oracle anymore. Apollo fired her and took her gift away, which I didn't realize you could do, but I guess if he's a god, he can do whatever. But he did it because she kept refusing him romantically. And she just says all of his previous relationships ended in disaster, so she didn't want to risk it. And now she's lost her oracleness. She also can't go home because her parents disowned her. And it came up in the last book, but her parents are impious and pious.
Impious.
Sure. So they're basically against the gods. But there's like a group of people that are like that. And Sybil's also worried that she won't be able to get a new job because a god.
She doesn't have
she can't
oracle
do what
power
she trained
anymore.
to do, and Apollo fired her. So, like,
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah, she went to oracle school. So we actually, this is one thing that really bothered me. So, like, they met up once at a club.
Yeah.
Right? Sybil with, like, Xerxes and some other dude. I don't remember his name. And the three of them sat at a table, and Lexa and Persephone sat with them at their table. I don't really remember why. I think Hermes.
No, it was a
like,
guy. A guy met them at the bar and was like, "Come sit with us."
Oh, right. The guy that worked at the journalism at the newspaper with
but they didn't know that
with Persephone
at first. Yeah.
They didn't. So they met once, and like all of a sudden now Sybil became like besties with them like immediately. Like, it's just weird to me how like Sybil went from complete stranger to knocking on their door after getting fired.
And like she was, I think in the last book a tiny bit, like they were becoming better friends, I guess, but like I didn't realize that they became besties that quick.
Yeah. But, like, she was living, like, I think in the last book, she actually moved in with Apollo.
I think she...
Which I also don't understand, because if you move in with someone, isn't then the insinuation that you're going to have a romantic relationship?
In this one, she doesn't live with him, I don't think. She just lives in one of his houses. But that seems pretty common that, like, when you get a job with a god, they're like, here's a house. In this book.
Oh, I thought she lived in...
I don't know.
His apartment.
He owns the apartment, but I don't know if he lived there as well. But I don't know if we get that ever. But yeah, so Lexa then says that Sybil can work with her. So
first day, I'm hiring employees.
Persephone says she'll ask Hades if she can get a job there, and you're just like, nepotism. Like, okay, I get it. Like, you want to help your friend out, but also, days pass and she doesn't ask him. I'm like, if you're gonna tell your friend you're gonna do it, you should probably do it.
Do it. I know. It's inconvenient that she can't just, like, send him a text and be like, OMG, Apollo fired Sybil.
Yeah.
Anywhere you can put her.
And get her back on her feet, sure.
Right?
Like, it's not a great look, but whatever. Anyway. So Lexa then says that Sybil can live there and she can have Persephone's room because Persephone's never around anyway. She's in the underworld. And Persephone, like, playfully hits Lexa, and Lexa goes to hit her back with a pillow, but ends up hitting Sybil. And then they just have an all-out pillow fight. And you're like, was this written for a man? Like, I don't...
I know, I was thinking, it's like, is this
right?
like a
and then
porno?
The pizza guy
What's
shows
happening? So it's definitely a porno.
But yeah, so the pizza does show up, but he says it was delayed because of protests. The impious are protesting the upcoming Panhellenic games. But don't care about that at all. They just watch the movie and eat pizza. And Persephone can't stop thinking about Apollo and how it's her obligation to her readers to expose injustices, especially when it comes to the gods. And maybe if she writes a good story, they won't make her write about herself. I'm like, where's the logic here? Like, she's a goddess. Ugh.
Yeah. I feel like she should, like, this is what I mean. Like, she's letting Dimitri and, like, the guy above Dimitri, like, blackmail her. Like, this is when she should let her goddessness out and be like, you're blackmailing me? I don't think so, dude. I'm the goddess of spring. And, like, I'll turn you into a plant.
Also, she could easily just say, Hades, they're blackmailing me. And Hades would say, no, they fucking aren't. And fire them. Literally in fire.
Buy the newspaper. Do, like, a Christian Grey thing. Not that that's
not healthy.
Not that that's ideal.
He could.
That's literally what they did in 50 Shades of Grey. So she graduated, got a job immediately at a publishing firm, like publishing books as the top fiction editor's assistant. Because, you know, that happens. And the Christian Grey guy decides, oh no, because the fiction editor is a man. So he buys the publishing firm. And then she's like, you're my boss now? And he's like, no, technically I'm your boss's boss. But, like, he still bought the publishing firm. And then they get the fiction editor fired because he comes on to her and tries to touch her. And she's like, no. So they get him fired. And then they bump her up after, like, 2 weeks of working there. They're like, you can be the fiction editor interim. And then it just becomes permanent. And it's like, there are other people that have been working here for longer.
Go from an assistant to the head.
That was a nice...
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
Is this the same
and, like,
book?
A month out of...
Is this book? Oh my god.
Feels like it should happen.
Anyway. So later, Lexa is asleep on the couch, and Sybil is kind of nodding off a bit. But Sybil asks Persephone to promise her not to write about Apollo. And she says he's not like Hades. He covets his reputation. And she asks her not to fight in her name. Like, that is so important. Like, this is not Persephone's battle. Her friend is asking her not to do this. Yeah.
To stay out of it.
And Persephone hesitates because, as a goddess, promises are binding. So she says she doesn't make promises. And Sybil says she was afraid that that Persephone was going to say that. Do we think that Sybil knows that she's a goddess?
I feel like if she can, with her oracle power, I feel like she might suspect. I agree. Because she can see auras. She's already said that she's seen Persephone and Hades' aura, and it's all intermingled when they were at that benefit.
It would make sense. Like, and especially when she was like, when she says that she was afraid she was going to say that she wouldn't promise. Like, yeah. It is shitty, though. Stop being a shitty friend, Persephone.
So Persephone's like, she's lying awake that night. I guess Lexa and Sybil are like strewn around her. I guess they like all fell asleep in the living room. So she's debating whether or not she should write the article on her and Hades. The one that they are telling her she has to write. So she says, on one hand, like on the positive, it gives her control over the release of the information. But she also doesn't want to give up details of her personal life. And, like, also the fact that she's being forced into it automatically makes her not want to do it.
Yeah.
Get that. But, like, she's also, like, it's her dream job. So does she really want to throw that away?
And I feel like if you get fired from Athens News, it's not going to be easy to get another job somewhere else.
It seems like the other news outlets are, like, more... tabloidy. Like, this is the one reputable newspaper. It seems like the other ones are sort of more tabloids. She's also, like, thinking, like, she just got free of her mother, and now, like, her freedom to decide things is being shackled again. Yeah. And, like, again, I get that. Like, she wasn't really ever free from her mother, because she depended on her mother for her magic. Then she was with Hades, which was another form of, like, shackling because of their deal and their bargain. Then she finally got free of that. She realized she had her own magic, so she didn't need her mother. And now all of a sudden, she's being forced into something else. So, like, she hasn't ever felt like she can make her own decision.
I understand these things. But the fact that she won't ask for help is stupid.
But I feel like she's got that mentality of, like they all don't want to ask for favors because of the implication of that, right? If you ask someone for something, then you have to owe them a favor. Like, and I just feel like maybe that's part of her
But, like,
damage.
this is also a favor to Hades to not publish an article about them. Like, it's not, like, that they would be mutually helping each other if they stopped an article.
Yeah. But, like, also, if she decided to write it, would she have told him that she was writing it? Like, anyway, she's also, like, really pissed at Apollo for the whole Sybil situation, and she still wants to write the story about him because she thinks he needs to answer for his behavior. So she gets up, like, she's like, oh, I can't sleep. So she gets up and she teleports to the underworld so Hades can make her feel better. Woo! So when she gets to the underworld, she's actually surprised that he's asleep. Like, she didn't expect him to be asleep. So she goes to him and she, like, runs her fingers through his hair, and it obviously makes him wake up, and he grabs her wrists. And that startles her, the fact that he woke up so quickly.
And of course he's gonna be, like, if somebody starts touching you in your sleep, you're gonna be like, what the fuck is going on? Obviously he's gonna react.
Yeah, and, like, obviously he's worried that him grabbing her wrist, like, he's worried he did it too hard.
Of course.
And he hurt her. And she's like, no, I'm fine. I just, like, I couldn't sleep without you.
I don't understand their relationship. It's only sexual.
Yeah. It does seem primarily sexual, doesn't it? Because it seems like they cannot get along when they're not having sex
at all.
Yeah. So, like, I don't understand how they're like, oh, I love you the most. I love you the most. Like, I can't live without you. I can't live without you, or I can't live without the sex. Anyway, so, like, he starts to feel her up then, and I guess, you know, he's maybe a little pent up from that earlier interaction that you spoke about. But she says, like, I want to talk. And he's like, go ahead, I'll multitask. So, like, he starts, like, kissing her and, like, feeling her up and stuff. But then she mentions the whole situation with
she
Apollo.
wanted to talk.
And he growls and pulls away. And she tells him what Apollo did, and he's pissed. And he gets out of bed, and he tells her he can't talk about Apollo while in their bed.
I hate it.
Yeah. So, like, I will say that I do like that, and she likes it too, that he dropped a little their bed, like, indicating that it's theirs to share and not just his. However, like, this is such a red flag that, like, she can't mention something while they're like, she's the one who said she wanted to talk. He tried to go physical with it, so, like, it's completely his fault that she mentioned someone else while he was trying to get all hot and heavy. And so she actually thinks to herself, as soon as he got out of bed, she was like, this is another reason why it's red flaggy. So she thought to herself how, like, she was all warm and fuzzy when he called the bed their bed, but she fucked it up by mentioning Apollo. And it's like, I'm sorry, what?
No.
You fucked it up? Like, you shouldn't have to be careful about what you say. You're trying to speak your mind and talk about a problem that you're having, and, like, it is completely not your fault.
This is problematic. So problematic.
Yes! So problematic. Anyway, so he tells her, like, I guess she explains the problem and she indicates that she wants to write a story about him, about Apollo. And he tells her she can't write about Apollo. And she reminds him, like, you can't tell me what to write about, remember?
About
like,
you.
Yeah. And then he tells her that she can't be the one to serve justice, and there are other ways to get justice other than writing about him. And she asks, like, what he's afraid of, because she wrote about him and it turned out okay. And it's like,
you're complaining
okay?
about everything. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. But, like, I think what she means is, like, she wrote about him and it did cause him to, like, change his ways a little bit. But at the same time, did he change his ways because of the article, or did he change his ways because the person he loved highlighted things that he realized are problematic?
Like, they could have just had a conversation. They didn't need, she didn't need to write a damning article about him.
No. And I feel like it's their relationship to each other that caused him to like view what he's doing in a new light. It has nothing to do with the article itself. So his response is, when she asks, like, what he's afraid of, he says that he is reasonable, and, like, she intrigued him, which is why he didn't, like, come after her. But, like, he's like, I don't want Apollo intrigued with you. And I'm like, fuck, possessive much? Like, God. Anyway, so she tells him that Apollo, like, he will not touch what is belongs to Hades.
Possessive.
Ugh. But, yeah. But, like, that's what she says. She says that. She's like, Apollo won't touch me because I'm yours. And he's like, no, but I can't protect you from other gods. Like, gods and goddesses can't protect each other from each other. So he's saying, like, essentially, this is a fight you would have to fight on your own. But in the future, he does fight it for her, so I don't understand. Anyway, so then she asks him, you wouldn't fight for me? Which I also hate. Yeah. I hate this entire conversation. And he answers that he would burn this world for her. Cool. Which, even though I hate the conversation, a part of me is still like, aww. Even though it's so problematic. Anyway, but he, like, essentially is begging her not to write about Apollo. And that she can't save everyone. And she answers that she's not trying to save everyone. She's just trying to save the ones wronged by the gods. Yeah. And I'm like, so everyone. And, like, then they have a little disagreement. I didn't write the whole thing down, but, like, it's a disagreement about how, like, in Hades' mind, gods exist to punish mortals. But Persephone is like, but they're not. It's the only reason you're thinking that is because that's the way it's always been, but that doesn't have to be the way it will be. Like, we can change that. And, you know, it's sort of like, well, if I guess it's sort of like, what is the purpose of the gods? Right? Like, in Hades' mind, the gods are there to pass judgment. And, like, to a certain extent, I agree.
His job is literally, like, to judge if you go, what afterlife you get.
Yeah. Yeah, and, like, I do agree to a certain extent that, yes, that is why the gods exist. If you take that away, then what is left for them? But I feel like, at least in this, well, in Greek mythology in general, and in this story, I feel like the gods have taken it too far. It has gone to an extreme where innocent people are being, like, are getting, are getting punished for no reason. Right? So, like, they've taken it to an extreme that Persephone is not comfortable with. So, I do think she's trying to take it too far the other way.
I understand it more with other gods. But Hades' job is literally judgment. Like, that is, at the end of the day, his job as a god. Yeah. So, like, I feel like this is unrealistic to ask of him.
Yeah. Anyway. So, nonetheless, after their little disagreement, she does promise not to write about Apollo.
Promises.
Yes.
She is
promises
a goddess
not to write about Apollo,
even
though gods' promises are binding. Unless maybe in between gods and goddesses.
Then we should have heard
it's not binding. Maybe it's only binding with gods and mortals. I don't know. Anyway, but she can see in his eyes that he doesn't quite trust her. Like, trust that her promise.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. Anyway, like, even though they've had this disagreement, even though she is, like, sullied their bed by mentioning Apollo. I know. Literally 10 seconds after this conversation, he pushes her onto the bed and starts looking her out. And, like, then he starts fingering her at the same time. Anyway, so he makes her come, and then he tells her that she is his favorite flavor. Which I also don't like, and we've talked about this before, about how, like, they're making on both sides, like, not just on one side, but they make it seem like it tastes good.
Yeah.
And we need to normalize that it might not.
Well, and it also just, it tastes the way it tastes, but it's not like...
It's not yummy.
Oh, God. And, like, you can love somebody and enjoy doing it, but you don't need to... Yeah.
Anyway, after he tells her that she is his favorite flavor, he penetrates her and commands her.
Penetrates her.
Yes, he does penetrate her. I just really like that word. He commands her to say his name over and over and to pray to him.
Ugh.
And then he obviously makes her come and then he comes himself. Because, of course, everybody always gets fulfilled. So then they teleport to the baths, where they shower and have sex again.
Fun times.
It seems like he needs no rest time.
No. He's God.
Get it? Yeah, I guess. So when they finally go to sleep, Hades tells her that if she mentions any other man's name in their bed again, she's assigning that guy's soul to Tartarus. It's extreme.
Very extreme.
Yeah, but whatever. So he goes to sleep, and she stays up for a little bit, and she doesn't understand why it bothers him so much.
Her saying someone else's name?
Yeah.
Like, I get it.
But, like...
She wanted to talk, though. Like, that's the part that pisses me off, is she was like, hey, can we talk? And he was like, I can multitask. No, you cannot.
Yes.
You failed at it. I get him being like, I wanted to have sex and you said someone else's name. You shouldn't be thinking of someone else. But she didn't want to have sex. So, like...
Yeah. But also, like, I just don't understand why she can't see that he's jealous.
Yes. Because
she is equally jealous.
Yes.
Like, she was so jealous, she turned one of his ex-lovers into a plant.
Yes.
So, like, this whole book and the whole series bothers me because she's like, oh, gods and goddesses need to answer for their, like, behavior. What are you doing, sis? Like,
she turned somebody into a
plant.
What is this? Because they had a relationship with her partner now.
Yeah. Now, I mean, Minty also, like, tried to lead her to Tartarus. Yeah. But, like, even still, you know, like, that does not mean she gets assigned to planthood for all eternity.
Yeah.
So it just, like, I feel like she's being hypocritical.
Yeah, 100%.
And, like, she's jealous of all of Hades' former lovers, yet he's not allowed to be jealous. She said someone else's name when he's trying... Like, I agree. She said she wanted to talk. He then tried to also go sexy times.
Yeah.
But, like, it bothers me that she's allowed to be jealous and he is not.
Yeah. And, like, him saying, hey, don't mention somebody in the bed anymore, I get it.
Yeah.
It is weird that she cannot.
I mean, like, I would, it's not like, I feel like this similar thing, like, if my husband started talking about another girl while we were, like, getting jiggy with it, I'd be like, maybe don't, please.
Yeah.
But like, again,
it's not like
it's a gray area because she said, I want to talk.
Yeah, but it's not even like she's like, so Apollo, he's so hot. Like, she was like, Apollo's a piece of shit, and he's like, don't talk about another man.
So the next day, her and Lexa go to lunch, and she sort of talks about their disagreement, and she thinks that, like, Hades is usually willing to, like, hear her out. In other words, he's normally willing to change his mind after she's argued with him about it. But, like, with this, he was completely, like, unyielding. Like, he wouldn't change his mind. And I haven't seen this whole him being willing to hear her out. Normally she mentions something or he mentions something, they get into a fight and then they don't talk for a couple of days and then they get back together by having sex.
Yes.
So, like, I don't see this.
Yeah.
This side that she thinks she sees.
No.
And, like, Lexa actually agrees with Hades on this, that Apollo is, like, he's the golden boy, he is beloved, and people may not believe Persephone if she writes about him. And, like, Persephone is trying to change the behavior of a god with just a few words.
Yeah. She's also not really taking Hades seriously when he says that it's a bad idea, and, like, there's probably a reason he's saying that isn't just because he doesn't want you to write about gods. Like, she's very short-sighted.
Anyway, so, like, Persephone is annoyed that Lexa is, like, siding with Hades. And I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like I remember her saying, like, maybe she's siding with Hades because now she works for him and sees him, like, in a different way. Anyway, so she's annoyed about it, and she accidentally lets some of her magic out. And some vines, like, break through her skin. So she has to, like, pull them out. But then, obviously, like, it opened up a fissure in her skin. Yeah. So then it starts to bleed. Which sounds really pleasant.
Yeah.
So she's obviously like, oh, shit, I should probably continue my lessons with Hecate.
Yes.
And Lexa asks, like, are you going to tell Hades about that? And she was like, that hasn't happened to you before. But she's like, no, it's nothing. We're not going to worry about it. And Lexa adds that, like, the discussion, she was like, I don't even know why we're having this discussion about Apollo, because you promised not to write about him. But Persephone is obviously back to then thinking about Sybil and being like, should I just let Sybil suffer?
And do what she told me not to and fight this fight for her? Even though she said, please don't fight this fight for me?
Yeah. And like, Persephone actually says that. Like, should I just let Sybil suffer? And Lexa's like, no, you should do what she wants you to do, which is leave it alone. And, like, then she asks, like, is this vengeance, like, a god thing? Like, are you guys overly vengeful? And, like, Persephone's like, what do you mean? And she's like, Apollo wants to punish his lovers. Persephone wants to punish him. And then he's going to want to punish her. So, like, again, it's that whole hypocritical thing of, like, they are all vengeful gods and goddesses, and she feels like she's apart from that, but she's not. Like, she's just aiming her vengeance at gods instead of mortals.
Yeah.
And Persephone is like, oh no, but I don't want to punish him. I just want to make the public aware that they shouldn't trust him.
You shouldn't trust any gods.
Right? But, like, then Lexa's like, but that was similar with Hades. Like, that was the same thing. That's what you wanted to do for Hades. And look what happened. Like, you were wrong about a lot of things. But according to Persephone, that was different.
Of course.
Because she ended up falling in love with him and he ended up being not a terrible person. But according, I guess, in her mind, all the other gods are terrible people. none of them can have duality.
Of course.
Ugh. Anyway, so a lady comes over and asks Persephone for a picture, because I guess they recognize her as Hades' lover, but Persephone says no. And the girl's like, oh, come on, just a picture, like, it's not a big deal, like, blah, blah, blah. And Persephone's like, no, like, I'm trying to have lunch, like, and it ends up in an argument, and this lady ends up calling her, like, you don't have to be such a bitch, like, and it draws attention to them at the restaurant, so they pay and they just leave. I mean, like, I get it, like, you don't want to be bothered while you're eating, but, like, it's the price of celebrities.
Yeah.
Like, it's what happens when you're a celebrity. Like, you just, you know, I don't know, man, just...
Yeah, I agree. It's unfortunate, and obviously it's super rude, but that's what's going to happen. And now there will probably be an article about her being a huge bitch.
Yeah. Anyway, so they leave, and Lexa then offers Persephone a tour of her new office, the Halcyon Project. And Persephone feels a little guilty because, like, it was essentially created for her, but she doesn't know anything about it.
That's her fault there.
Right? She doesn't ask anyone anything about it, so, like... And then she directs all that at Hades. Like, oh, he hasn't told me anything about it. It's like, why don't you ask? Oh, sorry. Because you're too busy getting licked out all the time.
It's true.
Anyway, so they get to the building, and there's a nymph there named Ivy, and she is, like, very formal towards Persephone and calls her, like, my lady. And she's like, oh, you want a tour? Oh, wait, like, let me call... You know, she sees her as Hades' partner, so sees her as, like, the co-owner almost of the project. So, like,
it was inspired by her.
Yeah, so, like, wants everything to be perfect for the tour.
Of course.
So she's like, can you wait a few minutes? Let me, like, call up and make sure everything is ready to go. And, like, gives her some, like, sparkling water, and, like, Persephone, like, is initially like, ugh, but is nice about it and is like, thank you. So Katerina is the director of the foundation and gives them, like, a very official tour. Everybody is, like, lined up outside their offices, and, like, this sort of, like, annoys Lexa a little bit, because Lexa just wanted to show her friend her new office. Like, she didn't want it to be a formal thing.
But which also annoys me, because I'm like, you can't, she's Persephone.
She
like,
is.
That's
the
way it's going to be. You're also, this is your second day on the job. Shouldn't you just be don't be a bitch to people that work there. You're trying to keep your job. You're not higher or above anybody. Like, it annoys me that she gets so annoyed.
Yeah. Anyway, so on their tour, Katerina tells her about, like, all the other projects that the Cyprus Foundation has in the works, including Cerberus House, which is, like, a series, it's like a chain of no-kill animal shelters. Then there's the Safe Haven Project, which helps people pay for funeral costs. And then they have Chariot, which trains therapy dogs for children. So, like, Hades got a whole lot of, nonprofits on the go here. And Persephone feels guilty because she wrote a shit ton of terrible things about Hades, and, like, he's doing so many good things. But, like, then she's like, why didn't he tell me about any of these?
Why didn't she find any of them in her research? Because she was only looking for bad shit.
Yeah, why didn't she ask?
Yeah.
Anyway, so they finish the tour, and Lexa brings Persephone to Hades' office to snoop around. And Lexa gets, like, called away for a minute. And, of course, then Hades magically appears. And she's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, well, Ivy called me. And Persephone didn't even know that he had a phone. And she's like, I should have known that. I'm like, yeah, you probably should have.
Yeah.
And he tells her, she was like, I want your phone number. And he was like, she's like, why don't I have your phone number? And he's like, if I want you, I can find you. And if you want me, just say my name. And, like, what if they're in a fight?
Yeah.
And he doesn't come to her immediately. Like, I feel like she should still have his phone number.
Yeah, I don't think it's... Yeah, it's dumb.
And like even if they don't need to use it ever, I just feel like that's one of the things that they should have. Like, they should have each other's phone numbers.
Well, because she could text him and be like, hey, Apollo was an ass to my friend. She doesn't need him to come there for that. They could have a text conversation about it.
Yeah.
There's many things you can have a text conversation about.
Yeah. Anyway, so then she, like, chastises him about the fact that, like, it seems like everybody, especially those that work for him, seem to know more about him than she does. Like, this Katerina lady, like, knows more about him than she knows. And
because she's working at one of his foundations. Yeah. Of course she knows more about his foundations than...
Yeah.
They just started dating. And, like, what do you want? If they stopped having sex long enough to talk...
Exactly. Because then that's the one thing is she says, like, you can have a conversation with me and bring things up, like, just in passing. Like, I shouldn't have to ask for every little piece of information. She essentially just wants some small talk.
Yeah.
And she says that, or, like, she says that, like, if she is going to be seen as more than his lover, then she needs him to share things with her. But, like, she doesn't want to be his lady or his queen. So what does she want?
She doesn't know.
No. Anyway, so his excuse is that he's been alone for so long, he's not used to sharing. And, like, valid point. It's been, like, 3 or 4 months of them, like, officially being together. So, like, and by officially, I mean, like, unofficially-ish. But, like, that is going to be hard to combat versus thousands of years.
Yeah.
So she sees that picture that he has of her on his desk, and she wants to know where he got it. And he was like, obviously, I took it when you weren't looking. And so she says, well, then I want a picture of you. And, like, they get flirty, and they're about to have sex in his office on his desk. Which, I mean, like, yes... Of course.
Yes,
hot office
for sure.
sex.
I love hot office sex. My issue is, when are they supposed to talk if they're having sex all the time?
I don't know. Anyway, so then Lexa comes back in and, like, kills the mood. And I'm like, why couldn't he magically lock the door? And shouldn't he have magically locked the door?
Yeah, or just closed it. Also, does Lexa have no boundaries?
Well, I guess she didn't think Hades was in there. She left and he wasn't there.
Yeah.
So she comes back in not expecting to find him there.
But you'd think she'd be like, oh shit, sorry, and walk away.
Yeah, but she doesn't. Anyway, so, like, obviously that killed the mood, so Persephone is like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go back to work. And my thought is, like, how long was she fucking gone? Like, she's literally had this job for maybe a month. She went out for lunch, walked back then to Lexa's job, like, walked to that office, got an official tour, had to wait for it to be set up, then tried to have sex with Hades, and now is walking back to her office. Like, how long does she get for lunch? Like, she's a new employee. Like, you should be taking, like, your half hour or your hour for lunch, not, like, 3 hours in the middle of the day to just go gallivant around.
Yeah. It's wild.
I feel old, like, ranting about this. I'm like, what about the good old days when we work 15 hours for 50 cents? Like, but it really annoys me.
No, but that's not what you're saying. She should respect her lunch hour. And, like, sure, once you're in a job a bit longer, there's a bit of flexibility. You could be like, hey, sorry, I had to go do this tour, which could be a part of her job. Because, like, as they were leaving lunch, she was like, yeah, I got half an hour. That's enough time. But if she came back and she was like, oh, I did a tour of Hades' new project, whatever it's called. Like, that could be part of her job because she is reporting on him. So I don't see, like... But she doesn't do that.
No.
That's not what she's like, oh, I have half an hour to my lunch. That's loads of time for all of these gallivantings. And it's not.
Yeah. Anyway, it really bothers me.
Yeah.
So, and, like, I'm just annoyed because she gets upset at, like, the stuff that Dimitri does to her, like, orders her to do. And it's like, you've literally written one article and, like, you're taking, like, all this extra time for breaks. You're, like, causing the newspaper to be surrounded by people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like she expects a lot more leeway than what she gets.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know what you're expecting.
Well, she's expecting to be treated like a god.
Yeah. Anyway, so she goes back, she's, like, going back to her office, and Lexa, like, says something to her before she leaves. She says, like, oh, imagine, like, everyone's falling over you now just because you're Hades' girlfriend, but, like, imagine what they'll do when they find out she's a goddess, which stresses her out, because she's like, oh, shit, yeah.
Yeah.
So, at the office, she gets back, and there's a white rose with a red ribbon on her desk, but Helen's like, I have no idea how that got there. And then Helen asks, like, oh, how's that exclusive story you're writing about you and Hades? And she's like, how do you even know about that? Like, you shouldn't know about that. And she's like, oh, sorry, I heard about it while you and Dimitri were, like, in the office or something. And she's like, please don't talk about it. Like, you're not supposed to know about that. So, like, she sends her away. And then she starts researching Apollo. Even though she promised she wouldn't write about him, she didn't say she promised not to research him.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is just, like, you're not researching. If you didn't research him, it would be easier for you not to write the article.
Yes. But it's also, I just don't understand. Like, there's only 13 gods, and what is she going to write about? She can't promise not to write about one of them, because she's refused to write about anything else. She's only writing about taking the gods down.
But, like, at the same time, there are more than 13.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Like, she's not considered one of the 13.
That is true.
Right? There's a whole lot of minor gods. There's just 13 big
that's
ones.
a good point.
Anyway, so, like, I agree with you, though. Like, I feel like she should widen her scope.
Yeah.
And, like, there's no reason why she can't write a really super fluffy article on her and Hades that doesn't actually reveal, like, anything about the inner workings of their relationship. Like, I don't think they're asking her to write, like, pornographic detail.
No.
Because that's really all they have. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, she could easily write about how, like, you know, write about how she first saw him to how she sees him now. Or, like, write about his businesses. Or write about his new project. Like, there are a million ways to write an article about the two of them that doesn't include the nitty-gritty personal details.
Exactly.
And, like, I'm also curious, he's had lovers in the past. All the gods have lovers. Strings of them. So why do they want an exclusive on her and Hades?
I think it's just people want more information on her, because it seems like she came out of nowhere and showed up there, and, like, she did. But
yeah,
it would be better for her to write it than have somebody find something else out and write it.
Yeah.
Also, they said he wanted it by Friday. Like, how long is this fucking week? Is it only Tuesday?
I guess.
Wild.
Anyway.
This entire book just 1 week.
Essentially. So she's researching Apollo and realizes that all of his relationships from antiquity, aka, like, all of the mythological stories that we have about Apollo, end tragically for the other person. And it tells us about a couple. There was, like, the Oracle Cassandra, who, like, their relationship ended, and he put a curse on her that she'll always see the truth, but nobody will ever believe her. So, like, that's a real myth. Anyway, so Dimitri comes into the office and asks how her article is coming. And she is really mad at him, and she calls him a coward, and that he should have said no to Cal, the guy that demanded that she write this article. And I'm just like, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Like, anyway, but Dimitri's like, not everybody has a god to defend them. Like, he's just a regular human person. Like, he can't very well say no to his boss and get fired. Like, he has children. Yeah.
She's so unreasonable.
Yeah. And I wrote, actually, in my notes, she's so naive, I hate it, in all caps. Yes. Because I do. She is. And, like, it really bothers. She's got these, like, pristine ideals that she thinks everybody should adhere to, like, the best parts of themselves all the time. And it's like, that's not how life works. Anyway, she then, like, she sort of threatens him. And he's like, she's like, you know, it's not Hades you have to worry about, it's me. And she says she promises that she's going to dismantle him from the inside out. And he's like, journalism can't solve everything. And like, power, some things are greater than that, like, and one of those things is money. Yeah. So like, you know, I sort of agree with him to a point there. Like, just because you write something doesn't mean that everybody is going to change their minds. Like, if that was the case, then we wouldn't have so many, like, world problems with, like, so many pro and against things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, anyway, it's just ridiculous. Yeah. So, Friday comes around, and they're helping Sybil move. And Hermes is there because Persephone had made plans with him. Remember from when you said, like, let's have a date?
Yeah.
So this was the date. So
rude.
They made plans, and then she was like, oh, I have to help my friend move. And he was like, but what about our plans? And she was like, well, I guess you're going to have to come help. And then her reason is, my friend just got out of an abusive relationship, so I have to help her move.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what?
Like, I get it. Apollo obviously is a shitty person, and it wasn't a great thing. But
it wasn't a relationship.
No.
It was a she worked for him.
Yeah, it wasn't a relationship. He was, like, he seems like he's an abusive person. Sure.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a relationship. Also, it's just so fucking rude. Like, I get it. Obviously, things come up. And, wait, so does that mean, did he say that they were going to do something this? I thought he said Friday.
It is Friday.
She's supposed to have her story in.
She doesn't.
Okay. Cool. Okay. I just was wondering if my brain was working. Anyway, I just think it's so rude to him. She knew that she was going to have to help Sybil, so why didn't she send him a note and say, sorry, I really need to help my friend. She needs to move out. Bad situation. Blah, 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 blah. But instead, she was just like, gives zero fucks about other people's time and thinks hers is the only important time. And, like, she could also hang out with him after.
Well, I think what she mostly did was like, hey, turns out I have to help my friend move. And he's like, well, what about me? And she was like, if you want to hang out, you're going to have to help.
I know, but I just don't know why she wasn't like, oh, you helped me. We can hang out after this.
I think it was, like, I think it more had to do with, like, I think she wanted to, like, because they're moving Sybil from the apartment into
her house.
Their apartment. Yeah. I think they all wanted to hang out then.
But they afterwards. Don't. She goes immediately to Hades. She doesn't even hang out with her friends. Which is so rude.
Well, then, yeah, I agree. Anyway, so the whole thing is, like, weird on Persephone's part. So they move Sybil back to Lexa and Persephone's apartment, into Persephone's room, since she mostly sleeps in the underworld. And then, I guess, they have to, like, drop off a van or something like that. So Lexa and her go, and Lexa drops her off at Nevernight. And she sees a person arguing with one of the bouncers, who is an ogre. And she goes up and is like, what's happening? And she's a naiad named Luce. Or Lucy, I don't know. Leuce. I'm going to call her Luce. Sure. So Persephone's like, how can I help? Because she sees somebody there and thinks, oh, she was wronged by the gods. And she introduces herself as Hades' lover. And then says, sorry, ex-lover. And she is pissed because apparently the apartment Hades put her in is a shithole. And the club that he gave her a job in is also a shithole. And she wants to talk to Hades. And Persephone is pissed at the lover comment. Like, she's immediately put out by the fact that Luce was like, I'm Hades' lover Luce.
It is...
Sorry, ex-lover.
It does seem petty. It does seem like she's trying to do it to get under her skin. Until you figure out the truth. Which I don't think we do this. Whatever. Yeah. But, like, I get her being annoyed at her saying it. Because it does seem like it's like... It seems like it's on purpose.
Yeah. And it does also seem like... I don't know, like... Yeah. What you said. It just seems like she is saying lover. Oh, sorry, ex-lover. Yeah. Anyway, so... But she's obviously pissed about that. And Luce tells her, like, oh, you have nothing to worry about. It was a very long time ago. And it's like, but she still called herself his lover before correcting it. Yeah. So, like, it was a long time ago, yet you're still calling him your lover. Yeah. So she still brings her, she's like, I'll take you to Hades. So she brings her to his office and then goes in search of him because he's in one of the bargaining suites. And when she gets there, she demands an explanation before she turns Luce into a weed. Mm-hmm. So, like, again, we're getting, like, she is also vengeful and jealous. Yeah. And he's like, it was millennia ago, and he turned her into a tree for 2,000 years. Which is why he was like, that's why she thought we were lovers up until Sunday.
Yeah. So, like, that's not even her fault. Like,
no.
I feel bad for her.
He turned her into a tree for 2,000 years, and somebody turned her back. So she's only recently been turned back, so it's taking her a hot minute to get used to the fact that they're no longer lovers. Mm-hmm. And apparently she betrayed him, which is why he turned her into a tree. So, like, he caught her fucking someone else. So she asks, how many lovers have you had? And, like, obviously he's had thousands. Like, he's been alive forever. Yeah. And she's like, well, listen, I should probably be prepared to meet him. Since, you know, she's already met 2. But Hades says, like, I didn't plan on you meeting Luce at all. And apparently he wasn't even going to tell her about Luce.
Which is its own issue.
Yeah. And he was like, I was just trying to help her get on her feet in the modern world.
Which, fair.
Yeah. But, like, this really makes Persephone angry because she thinks she deserves to know about Luce. But
he should have probably told her.
I agree, yes. Oh, P.S. My ex-girlfriend was a tree for 2,000 years. She just got turned back into a naiad. Sorry.
Especially because, like, who turned her back? What are their intentions? Like, there's more to this than just... Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, she thinks she deserves to know, but in Hades' view, that means that she doesn't trust him to be loyal to her. But Persephone is like, no, this is a communication issue. And, like, we had this issue in the first book of him being like, I just want you to tell me things and just communicate with me, right? That was a conversation from the first book. And yet he is not willing to communicate with her.
It annoys me so much.
It's like the same thing over and over and over again. So then she asks if he still loves Luce, which is a ridiculous question.
She was a tree.
Yeah. And, like, obviously he doesn't. But to Persephone, this whole situation just shows how little she knows about him. And he's like, no, I'm just trying to protect you from my past. Like, why? Like, I wonder how much of this is he's afraid the more she sees, the more she'll realize he's not worth loving. Is that what's happening? Like, but in her mind, he's like, if by hiding things, it means he still has feelings.
Yeah. Also, hiding things is bad because you're hiding it. Obviously, you think you're hiding it for a reason. Like, the intention there is not great. But I don't... Like, maybe he realizes how jealous she is of ex-lovers, and he's like, I don't want to bring this shit up. because it's going to hurt her feelings.
Yeah.
That's like, if you're going to give him the best intentions, I suppose that could be why. But then when it happens, she's going to be even more pissed. Like right now. It just doesn't make any sense.
So she says, like, she doesn't want to be protected from his past. Like, she wants to know all of him inside and out. So he says, let's start with the inside, and starts making out with her. So again, he's trying to solve their problems through sex. And she wants him, but she also wants to talk this out. She wants to communicate and have a serious conversation. So, like, they talk some more, and for some reason, she brings up, like, where he went Sunday night after leaving her. And I wonder if it's because he said, like, they were together, like, she thought they were together up till Sunday. And so he says, like, it was when Luce returned. Like, that was the day she came back, and that's why he left.
Yeah.
And she makes the leap that he chose Luce over her. Which is, like, just for fuck's sakes. Like, obviously, if someone gets turned back from a tree, they're gonna have some drama.
Yeah.
And damage. And, like, this is also a very 50 Shades situation. Because, like, the exact same thing happens in one of the books. One of Christian Grey's former subs ends up coming back into their lives. And he tries, same thing, he tries to hide it from her because he doesn't want her associated with that at all. But she's like, I deserve to know what's happening in your life, and I want to know about all of your, like, your subs and everything. I want to know about your relationships. But he's trying to remove her from that because he doesn't want his past touching her because he thinks it was fucked up.
Yeah.
So, like, it literally is almost the exact same scenario.
That's interesting.
And, like, same thing happened. Like, they were together, and then he got a call and had to leave.
Yeah. It's
so,
very...
like, there's definitely some, I feel like some
overlap.
Similarities there. Yeah. Anyway, so, like, then she yells at him not to touch her. And she tells him, like, you had your chance to tell me, and he didn't. And he did the opposite of what he asked her to do. Communicate. And she tells him that actions speak louder than words, and she teleports away.
Like, I get why she's pissed. Like,
yes.
He should have told her.
I would be more upset over the fact that he didn't tell her at all. And less upset over, like, him choosing her over her is stupid.
That's not what happened.
It's stupid. Like, she needs to reflect. Some girl was turned into a tree for 2,000 years. Then somebody turned her back into a human. And now all of a sudden she's in this crazy world with cars and phones. And, like, she has everybody she knows is dead. So, like, I think she needs to be a little bit more understanding about this. Like, obviously he didn't pick Luce over
100%.
her. That's ridiculous. Yeah. But I do think he should have told her maybe not when he got back, because again, it was like 3:00 in the morning, he just had sex with her and then they went to bed. But I do think in the morning he should have had the conversation of, hey, I should tell you what happened last night. Somebody that I used to have sex with 2,000 years ago was transformed from a tree to back into a human or naiad or whatever, and I had to deal with it. Like, she was completely disoriented and blah blah blah. And I had to break up with her. I
don't think it had to be immediate though on his part either. Like, he could have probably been like, thanks for telling me, send her to a room in Nevernight, gone back, fucked Persephone,
finished her off,
and then been like, so this is unfortunate, but I have to go deal with this. This is what happened. And then gone and done it. Like, there's so many other ways that he could have done this.
Yeah. But her being like, you chose her over me, is such a baby
thing
to do.
I know. I hate that so much.
Like, it is such an eye roll. And this is what I mean, how when I first read this book, I didn't hate Persephone as much, and I didn't hate the things she complained about as much as I do now. And, like, I'm not that much older.
No. I just, it infuriates me that she's, like, not caring about this poor woman that was a tree for 2,000 years. And then in the next chapter, she's like, I feel so bad. I'm like, what? Where did this, what the fuck is going on?
I know. Well, I know. She, like, takes her, spoiler for next week, she, like, takes her under her wing, which is
She invites her to live with them. I'm like, how? You have a house with an extra person in it now. You already gave your bed up to Sybil. You have a 2-bedroom apartment. Now 4 of you are going to live there. You're not going to the underworld because you're in a huge fight with Hades. Where? Where are they living? Anyway, that's next week's problem.
Yeah. It is next week's problem. Thank God. Thank God for that.
So that wraps it up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in any of our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, or on Instagram, Facebook at coffeeandcoread, and coffee.coread on TikTok. We'll also, we won't have a poll this week, I guess, or will we? Poll. Who knows? Maybe we'll come up with something. Maybe it'll be about Iron Flame and if you're going to buy it or not.
Yes, because it comes out
out on Tuesday,
which is amazing. We're both super excited about it.
And
although I won't get mine till Friday.
I'm just going to go buy it at the store and then return the one that comes in the mail.
So next week we're going to be reading chapter 7 to 14 of A Touch of Darkness and Complaining Hardcore. So make sure to follow along, and if you're enjoying our little chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.